Well, it's been a long-awaited return here, I think. The pocket has been in a deep slumber, but getting to be about 65, 60 sometimes up here in Jersey now, so I think we're coming out of it. Got spring ball in the air, and we got Jason Cabinda joining us during the offseason with the pocket.
Absolutely, man. I'm super excited to continue to talk about our boys, Penn State football, man. I'm excited to be on the pocket.
Very interesting, right? Because you're always worried about tread on the tires with your players. You're always worried about keeping them fresh. That's become a bigger focus, I think.
Guys get hurt. Now we're condensing down to 105. You got even less bodies. Now you can have a week where you go through a string of injuries and you might have to call off practice because it ain't worth it. Are you going to jeopardize your season over spring practice? You can't afford to. You just paid Jim Knowles. You just hired Drayton. T9's in the building. Every single year is so much more critical and crucial than it has ever been in the era of college football, ever.
Quarterback sneak right side, touchdown, Penn State!
Whoa! Who knew I would make it this far? They hated it.
Well, it's been a long-awaited return here, I think. The pocket has been in a deep slumber, but getting to be about 65, 60 sometimes up here in Jersey now, so I think we're coming out of it. Got spring ball in the air, and we got Jason Cabinda joining us during the offseason with the pocket. That's not to mean B-Bell's gone. But work schedules, we want to get this done during the day. Jason's hopping on. We've done some work together. He's been on the channels, as you guys have seen throughout the years. So, Jay, appreciate you hopping on this, dude, and I'm excited to kind of tackle this off-season pocket project with you, my guy.
Absolutely, man. I'm super excited to continue to talk about our boys, Penn State football, man. I'm excited to be on the pocket, to continue to deliver you guys great content, man. A fresh perspective on the team, fresh perspective on the players, and really just a perspective from the players, which I think is super, super important, man. So I'm excited.
Yeah, dude. But like I said, it's been a minute. So what have you been up to? You got some other stuff cooking on the College Sports Co. / state media channels of your own. You want to dive into that a little bit? Give the folks a little teaser about what's coming?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I've been working on a concept these past couple months. It's called the Fairway Huddle. It'll be a podcast / game show in which I bring on current NFL active players, some retired, on a show over at my private indoor golf club called Loop 19. Now, we'll be playing 9 holes at Pebble Beach. It's basically going to be a competition between all the contestants. Whoever can score the lowest score with me in a 2-man scramble at the end of the series will win $10,000. Half of it will go to charity, half of it will go in that player's pocket, and on top of that, every single player who comes on the show will get $2,000 to bet against me on it. Any approach shot under 185 yards must land on the green in order to count. I'm super excited to bring that to you guys and bring that to life. We're going to dive into these players' lives, into their off seasons, into their teams, their adversities and careers that they've gone throughout their time playing football as well, and really just give a chance for you guys to see them, behind the helmet and see the personalities. But I'm super excited. We got some really interesting characters. The pilot episode is going to be Pro Bowl safety Javon Holland from the Miami Dolphins. He's local. I'm down here in Fort Lauderdale, so we get to enjoy the sun kind of all year long. But man, we're really excited to get that going and get it ripped off, man. It's going to be sweet.
Bro, when we started ideating that, I loved it. We're obviously going to get some Penn State boys. That's why it's going to live on here. But I love the concept of pulling as many stories into it, because that's the stuff that's ripping now, honestly, is getting to know the guys. You see them wearing a jersey. You see them wearing a helmet, like you said. There's a little bit more exposure now in terms of what it is really, but like everybody's got a dope story. Everybody's got something cool to learn from that can apply to everybody's life. So stoked about having the platform to be able to get that stuff out. And I might have to come down there and try to win that money from you, because I'm feeling pretty good. Early in the season now for the kid. Got a couple rounds under my belt, but I'm feeling pretty good about it. So famous last words, but we'll see. But I appreciate you sharing that, Jay. So listen, we're gonna try to keep this a little bit more structured, kind of like maybe a pardon the interruption type of thing. We want to make sure we cover Penn State. Obviously, it's been a while, so we're gonna go retroactively here, talk about some of these new hires, give you guys our perspective on it, which we haven't really been able to do. Dive into the draft process. something Jason and I are both very familiar with, and we got some really good guys, got some guys that have some interesting takes and some interesting backgrounds, and then obviously try to circle this whole wagon back and bring it back to what's going on with the team in State College right now. And then mailbags come in the whole nine. So with that being said, dude, some of these hires have been, in my opinion, massive for the direction of this program. And I'm talking like, you hear Coach Franklin talk about it all the time with alignment. First time the whole thing's been aligned. But being able to go out, and we'll just start with Jim Knowles right away at like $3.2 million a year.
Home run hire, baby. Home run.
Paying the guy essentially a head coach salary in some capacity to come in and be the defensive coordinator of this football team is talking about shoving all the fuck in. Like, that's shoving all the way in. And I love it, right? With that comes a ton of expectations, and rightfully so, right? And I think we're at that point now where we can't shy away from those expectations. We have to run towards it. We have to skate to where the puck's going, and we have to run towards those things.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. If there's any doubt in anybody's mind that Penn State isn't absolutely all the way locked in on winning a national championship this year, I mean, that Jim Knowles hire really says it all. Arguably the best defensive coordinator in all of college football, and we go and get him from our rival in Ohio State. Like, Pat Kraft, Coach Franklin, these guys are all in on winning right now. We know how much Penn State is known for having a top 10 defense year in and year out, and then you go and add the best defensive coordinator in college football to that equation. Like, we've had some great Penn State defenses, man, but I honestly, like, we say the sky is the limit. The Milky Way might be the freaking limit with this defense coming next year. I mean, I am super, super excited to see what Jim brings to this team, and he has got a plethora of talent on all levels, from defensive line to linebackers to secondary, to utilize in all kinds of schemes. Nothing is going to be off the tables. I mean, this is super exciting.
So I think a unique point about this too is Coach has had to replace coordinators pretty consistently throughout his tenure. And I've talked about it. It hasn't quite been the Alabama model, right? Where these guys are going and taking Texas and Georgia and, you know, the Ole Misses, right? All the lineage that leaves Alabama has gone to go and take a program that can compete for national championships right away. That hasn't necessarily been the case. Ricky Ronnie goes to ODU. Manny Diaz goes to Duke. Brent Pry goes down to Virginia Tech. Like, not to bash those programs, but they aren't quite that type of move, right?
Yeah, not contending programs.
Yeah, and the one thing that I love about this hire is I think that gets monotonous, right? It's a good thing. You're growing your coaching tree. I'm not bashing it. It's not a negative, right? But what I'm saying is as you're continually trying to turn this over, because you have guys leaving for that type of job, you're not necessarily getting AA plus guys lining up to then take the defensive coordinator job, because it's not like the math just doesn't math in terms of, okay, I'm going to get in here and then I'm going to go here. It's not necessarily that. It's either here or here in some ways. So lateral or below in terms of growth mode for a program. What I love about the Jim Knowles hire, and I say all that to get to this point, is that I think Jim Knowles has proven that he doesn't give a shit about being a head coach. Like, he loves what he does. He loves running the defensive team room, squad room. He loves rolling the dice. I love his personality. Like, you know, a Jim Knowles defense, they're going to fucking roll it, dude. They're going to come after your ass. They're going to play sound. They're going to play fast, and they're going to play physical. So, like, I think this is a bit of a security blanket for Coach in a way, where now I got my defensive coordinator for the next 3 years. I know he's not leaving. He's paid. He doesn't have any ambition to be a head coach. He's on the latter half of his career. He's a Pennsylvania guy. That, to me, was the biggest takeaway, right? Because I do think, even though Coach K is coming back, he's going to have to replace an offensive coordinator here in the next year or two. Whatever it is, I think K has those head coach ambitions, and he's at that point in his career. Yeah. But I think he's solidified the defensive side of the ball now for at least 3 or 4 years. And I think that's the biggest point for me. When you're talking managerial handling and organization, consistency in that room is going to be big for us.
Yeah, and, let's not forget, Coach Franklin has caught a lot of flack in recent years over his hires at the coordinator position in general. We had somewhat of a home run hire in Manny Diaz. The offensive coordinator kind of that just got settled with Andy Kotelnicki. We kind of said, and we've spoken about this, that we haven't had as good a hire at that offense coordinator since we had Joe Moorhead. Then AK comes in and absolutely revolutionizes our offense and really gives us a shot. And I think it's the biggest reason why we were as successful as a team as we were this year. And then he goes and gets a guy like Jim Knowles, somebody who I've seen in interviews talk about how he grew up watching Penn State football, wishing that was a program that he was a part of, and knowing how much that tradition means and the culture of a great defense. Like, to me, this seems like a real personal challenge to Jim Knowles for me. I could tell in the way he was speaking about it that this is real personal for him. It's something that he really wants to go and succeed at for himself and also for the Penn State community that, he grew up watching and really idolizing. So I think this is really huge, especially because of the fact that Coach Franklin's coaching style and the way he manages things, he's a big CEO of the organization. He's the big manager. He's not a crazy, huge X and O's guy, and that's kind of the reason why the coordinator hires and his coaching style is so important, because it allows him to let these guys go and do their thing while Coach Franklin handles the rest, is able to keep his arm and hand on the temperature of the team at all times and kind of guiding everything. And I think this is just such a great fit, not only for Coach Franklin's coaching style and the way he manages things, but just for the offense and the defense and the direction we want everything going. I mean, this really, really can all gel up and mesh together for a team that can truly contend in 2025.
Yeah, and I think I think that's all those are fantastic points, and I'm always still like, let's wait and see, right? And now let's see how the personalities mesh. Let's see how the spring game goes, and let's ultimately see how training camp starts to develop, right? Because you really find out who you're going to be 2-3 weeks into training camp. So
absolutely.
The recipe, all the ingredients, the table's set. Now you got to go make the cake that's going to win the champion. That's going to win the cook-off, right? So, really excited about that. And I think this next point is going to talk about a few of these other hires here, but with Tom Allen leaving for Clemson, we lost a linebacker coach. We promote from within Dan Connor, which, selfishly, like I said, I was kind of thinking that, don't want to replace a guy thing, and I put Dan Connor as one of my candidates for a DC job, and could be now in training, but he's getting the linebacker room, which I think is huge. And the point with that being is Tom Allen leaves. He was handling the DC responsibilities and the linebacker room. The NCAA kind of opened the whole door up with unlimited coaches in terms of coaches that can actually work on the field with the players, so forth and so on. So not an issue there. Knowles is focusing on defense. You bring Dan Connor, the all-time leading tackler, up to run the linebacker room. How do you feel about that, Jay? You got to be excited. I know I am as a Letterman.
I mean, I'm super excited. I mean, we got to see Dan Connor in person. I got to see him multiple times during training camp during spring of last year, and the way he worked with those guys in indie drills and even in meetings. I mean, you could tell that Tom Allen had a real superior confidence in Dan and really handling the linebacker room, handling the scheme, and coaching these guys up from that standpoint. I mean, Dan's really been phenomenal. So, when I saw that Dan was getting the linebacker room, I mean, I almost felt like towards the end of the year, middle of the season last year, that it was almost already the case, just because of the amount of confidence that Tom Allen had instilled in Dan and the amount of tasks and the amount of onus he was putting on Dan to handle that linebacker room. So, when I saw him up for this linebacker job and being able to take it, man, it made complete sense based on what I saw in person at training camp and during the spring.
I mean, for me, we talked about it a lot last year. It was a young room, it was a developing room, and was probably our weakest point of all three levels of our defense last year in terms of overall play consistently throughout the season. I don't think that's a stretch, just watching it. You lose Kobe King, who's a guy that we're going to talk about later, but who got hot towards the end of the year and I think really stabilized that second level.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of question marks there. Like that to me, when I look at this roster right now heading into spring ball, obviously Tony Rojas, a guy who you and I have talked about, and B-Bell as well at length about what we love about his just raw ability. But you're going to need some generals in that room. And I'm not necessarily asking for guys stepping up, just talk about how much of a task that is, and how much a guy like Dan Connor leading it potentially puts you in a really good position to drive home an emerging talent that can take over this room and start to stabilize it. Obviously, recruiting is going to be a big part of it. Now you got the transfer portal. You can go out and get guys that can come in and fit. But talk about just Dan's overall experience, and I think being able to shore up what I identified as probably the weakest link in our chain defensively in terms of an overall unit that if I'm an offensive coordinator, I'm trying to attack. I'm trying to put these guys in binds, not because they're bad players, but because they're young and they're not established yet.
Yeah, well, I think the number one thing that Dan already has, just based on all the experience he has last year, is the respect of that room. I think, obviously, the tradition of linebacker U in that room, is not taken lightly at all. I know Dan talks about it a lot. I know the players are very aware of the standard and how important that is to Penn State University, and I think Dan has a great opportunity to really establish leadership in the room. That starts with guys like Tony Rojas. That starts with guys like Dom DeLuca, who have a lot of snaps under the belt already. But as you know, the depth is going to be a concern of that linebacker room coming to this next year. You got Tamir Robinson. He had flashes last year. We had a lot of games in which our twos were able to come in and get some snaps, and I feel like he flashed a lot. You got Dakari Nelson, who I got to see in person, and he's a physical dude. He is a physical
he came
dude.
in as a safety. He reminds me body-wise, like I haven't watched the tape, haven't watched the All-22 in depth, but when you talk about story, parallel universes, and parallel paths, Gerald Hodges, bro, came in as a safety, put some body weight on, can move him down to linebacker, put some muscle mass on him. So that's a great guy. But I just wanted to throw that comparison out there. A hell of a football player. We just missed him before we got on there. But man, very similar in terms of career paths up into this point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you could tell when I saw him in indie drills, he was still kind of getting the hang of, being at the second level and learning the steps as a linebacker and things of that nature, really just the fundamentals. But, man, the movement skill is there. The talent is there. The mentality is there. And that's one of the things that we worry most about moving a DB into that linebacker room is the physicality going to be there? And when I saw him go in one-on-ones, pass rush against the running backs, man, that question got answered real quick. This guy was trying to bull rush, and in practice we try not to bull rush. You try to work a move, work a side. He's bull rushing backs, trying to bull rush Nick Singleton, and I'm like, okay, this dude,
he's got some shit to him.
He's there. Exactly. He's got some shit to him. So I think there's talent there, and Dan's gonna have to really establish that room and get these guys going. Make sure from a scheme perspective that they're up to speed, and that's gonna be the toughest thing. And always is the hardest thing anytime that you change coordinators and things of that nature. But, man, I think this room has a chance if we can get some guys up to speed and we can settle some depth there. I think this could be a strong point in our defense. And like I've said all of last year, Tony Rojas has not hit his peak as a linebacker at Penn State whatsoever. This guy truly has some real unlocked potential that I feel like can come to fruition this season. I think even last season, he left a lot of plays on the field, and he was there. He was in position. It was just plays that he didn't finish. So I think with Dan kind of having his hand really on Tony, working on him one-on-one truly, I think we're going to be able to get the best out of Tony Rojas. And that's the type of dude who has the talent to be a first-team All-Big Ten linebacker. I truly feel that way.
Yeah, I know from a few guys that I spoke with close to the program, Tony really attached himself to Dan towards the latter half of the year. I hope that becomes a permanent fixture, right? Strap right here, bud, and let's go. You know what I mean? As much time as you can spend in the film room with him, as much time as you can spend getting some extra technique work done, whether it be tackling, fundamentals, whatever it is. Tony needs to, if you're listening, bud, I don't know if you do, whatever. If you're listening, bud, strap on, hitch your wagon to that fucking freight train and see what happens.
And that's just the thing as players in general, man. Like, it took till way late in my football career to start to have coaches that really played the game at a high level. So I think there's an extra level of attention to detail that you pay to a coach that was in your shoes, let alone the number one all-time leading tackler in Penn State history. I mean, you got to think that guy knows what the hell he's talking about, and you pay an extra ear to every single detail that comes out of his mouth. And like I said, with the respect thing, I mean, that thing, it's really there. And I just think that, Tony really could be an all-American type of player. I mean, he's just so natural as an athlete. He's got the feet. He's always in position. He's got great knee bend, which is tough as a linebacker weighing 240 pounds in space with a 195 running back that can make you miss, man. He's got all the attributes to be a great, great linebacker, and I know Dan's going to get everything he can out of him.
Yeah, I'm excited. Dan was part of some real special rooms in terms of linebacker rooms during his time at Penn State. I look for him to architect a few of those here in the very near future. Let's move back to the offensive side. We got a couple we got to cover here, but Stan Drayton with the running backs. Obviously losing Juwan, I think more so from a recruiting standpoint, it was
big blow.
Big blow, right? Like he really had his claws, especially in that Florida, southern southeastern region, and did a really good job. Obviously built a hell of a room. Katron and Nick and some of the young guys that we got to see flashes of last year. But Stan's walking into a pretty good situation. Yeah. And I think Stan coming from Temple, kind of familiar with like what I would consider Penn State's roots, that Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland kind of corridor, probably a pretty familiar guy. So what's your takes on Stan? What's his impact here, if any? And what do you like? For me, I'll just give it right here. Like I think it's come in there, teach your shit, but don't fuck it up. Like I don't mean like it's not disrespect to him, but he's got a hell of a room, right? So get those guys confident, get them playing the way you want them to play, give them whatever you can. But you're in a position where it's like you step into those positions sometimes in life where it's like, dude, this is the best situation I could humanly ever dream of. Like I just can't fuck this up, right? So just kind of rely on what you do, and then he'll start to be able to get his hand and his imprint on some of those younger guys as they're coming up next.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the most underrated hires that Coach Franklin has made in recent years. Obviously you talk about Juwan Cedar, you talk about, his recruiting impact. I mean, this is a guy who's an head coach over at Temple. He's had a ton of experience in the recruiting aspect. And then, you got to keep your two big backs happy, man. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. I mean, these are guys who probably had offers all across the country and crazy NIL deals, crazy money promises. They could have gone other places. But, when this hire comes, I think it's the type of hire that makes them feel really, really good about staying and knowing that they're going to be coached up and knowing that they're going to be able to get better. I still think that there's room for Nick and Katron to grow. And I really love that Stan in his first interview, that's one of the first things he said. He said, I feel like Nick and Katron really have some room to grow, and I think the first thing I'm going to do is do my best to identify their weaknesses and help them grow through those things. And obviously, we have depth in a guy like Quentin Martin and Corey Smith. I mean, this is a really, really good room, not only for the right now, but for years to come. So I think Stan's going to come in and do a great job, man. If he can get Nick to continue to make guys miss in space, which I think is somewhat of a weakness in Nick's game right now, I talk and joke about it all the time. It's like, if Nick and Katron were fused into one running back, they'd be like the perfect back, If Katron had Nick's speed and if Nick had, Katron's real quickness and short areas and things of that nature, man, they'd be so good. But, they both have their different styles. That's why we call them Thunder and Lightning, and they do such a good job feeding off each other in the run game. I'm excited about them. I'm excited about Stan, and I know he has to be super excited about the type of room that he has with those guys in it.
And I mean the fact that they came back, right? Like to your point, like with the NIL stuff, but they kind of have a little bit of that chip on their shoulder, Charlie Mike, finish the mission type shit, which I love, right? They got so close last year. We're integral parts of ultimately getting the program to where it is right now. So really cool to see them come back and want to leave it better than where they found it. And to your point, really excited about everybody involved there. And then I think the last one. Gave a little shout out, texted my guy personally, but Trace, getting Trace back around.
Money.
I did it a couple times, man.
Let's go.
I love Danny. I thought Danny's done a great job. And obviously, him having Trace as an asset now, I think is going to be really big for the development of that room. I know what it takes, man. It's a special kind of guy to lead the program from that position. There's a lot going on. And the more sounding boards you can surround yourself with, similar to Dan Connor, with folks who've been there, done that, right? Mm-hmm. I think is immensely valuable. And at the end of the day, let's not forget about this, man. We're not talking about 28, 29, 30-year-old pros. We're talking about 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kids.
Absolutely.
Who are still trying to develop not only as players but as human beings and understanding what the gravity of playing the position for a program, for a university, and ultimately at Penn State. I'm going to call it how I see it, and it's not a bad thing, the cult that is Penn State football, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for Trace. I know he kind of teetered the line of what he wanted to do and how he wanted to do it. I think he's going to be a hell of a football coach, and I think him just being able to immerse himself, he's going to bring value from an X's and O's standpoint and all that. But I think more so the value is going to be with the intangible side, with all the folks in that room. Drew specifically, obviously starting with 15, but everybody else, Gruckmeyer and so forth and so on down the line in that room, I think is going to benefit from T9 being around him.
Yeah, I think the tangible part is obviously, Trace's experience, everything that he did at Penn State. He broke records while he was here. Invaluable experience from a lot of different NFL teams that he's been on. He's seen probably every playbook in the book. He's seen every concept. The amount of knowledge that he's been able to immerse himself in just from his NFL career alone, let alone everything that he did at Penn State, I think is going to be truly invaluable to a guy like Drew, who's still looking to soak up as much as he can. I know AK's been doing a great job with Drew, but man, the impact that T9 is going to have on Drew on the field, I think is really, really going to be immense. And not only that, but I think there's a certain level of comfortability that you have as Drew with a guy like Trace, man, because they're in the same shoes, and sitting in that chair and handling that responsibility as a Penn State quarterback, the starter, the guy, it's not easy at all, man. There's a heavy weight, not only on the field, but off the field. And Trace, you too as well, but Trace was one of those guys who just handled it with such grace. He did such a good job of representing himself, representing his family in such a great and positive way to the whole community, and the way he treated people and the way he acted. And I think that can really, really also be a great thing for Drew to tap into in every and any way he possibly can, because in this day and age of social media, it's just really, really crazy. The way guys get hyped up, the way the fans are crazy, and people get the messages, the negativity, all this stuff. I don't think there's a better person that can teach Drew how to really tune everything out and really hone in and lock in on each and every single day than Trace McSorley. So I think this is an immense opportunity, not only for the Penn State program, but for Drew Allar and that quarterback room in general.
Yeah, and this hire goes back to the point I brought up about the NCAA now allowing guys, opening up a coaching staff's opportunity to bring in as much resources as humanly possible for their roster. Yeah. And that's not to take anything away from Trace. That's how I look at this hire, right? I look at this hire as an immensely deep and impactful resource for specifically the quarterback room. But then again, to your point, beyond that. And it's also now something that AK can trust, right? Where he may have been spending a little more time because, not that he didn't trust Danny, but it's just two guys now. Now he can truly pass off a lot of that responsibility in terms of molding your quarterback to both Danny and Trace, which allows him now to put his efforts and resources into other rooms and other areas within the offense, which I think only helps. It helps the process, right? You can compartmentalize and focus in on what you need to focus on, and you don't have to worry about all the other shit. That's a really good feeling as a guy that's at the top of the food chain there as the offensive coordinator. So
yeah, I think overall, when you look at everything, when you look at the hires, when you look at what Coach Franklin is building right now, every single move is very intentional. And when you look at them and you evaluate them, you start to really dissect what they all mean. Everything about the makeup and what it looks like to me is everything is taking a step towards getting over that final hump. In each and every single way. From running back coach to bringing T9 in to hiring Jim Knowles. I mean, everything about it is either leveling up or taking a step towards getting over that hump. And I know everything we're talking about right now is just on paper. We understand that. But a lot of these guys have a lot of credit and a lot of merit to their names where you cannot take it lightly just how great some of these hires that Coach Franklin have made this year are.
Yeah, and I think last year you saw a big shift, and I talked about it after the Ohio State game, where it's the one thing that I guess I could say I was a little unhappy with watching was just always the comparison and then deflection, right? When it came time to accept the responsibility of that quote-unquote big game, right? Yeah. There was always a little bit of deflection here and there, and this is the biggest compliment I think you could ever give a human being is the ability to grow. And not only just grow by talking about it, but by actually doing it. He started to talk about it after the Ohio State game, how those games mean more, period, right? Yep. And that's the first step in that. But then to piggyback off that, he's now backing all that fucking all the lip service up with action. And I think that's the supreme confidence you want to see from a leader, and that's what James Franklin is. He's the leader of the program, right? You want to see that supreme confidence, and I think that's only going to bode massive dividends up and down the chain for where this is going, right? And it might not be immediate, but at least now you're sitting there and putting yourself in the best position that you could humanly possibly create to achieve whatever that hump or get over whatever that proverbial hump or goal is, right? Yeah. And I think, to your point, it's going and compete for national championships consistently.
Yeah, and to be honest, now that you mentioned it and really talk about it, I mean, it reminds me a lot of the parallels that I had in Detroit while I was with the Lions. Yeah. And when we first got there, Dan was so much about the process and every single day and doing things right. And Coach Franklin's so much like that as well. And after that season, obviously we didn't have a great season. Then that next year we go to Green Bay at the end of the year. We kicked them out of the playoffs, almost made it. Seattle won their game, so we didn't get in. But after that year, the number one thing we started talking about was winning the NFC North. Because at the end of the day, if you want to go to the playoffs, if you want to go and be successful in that part of the year that really matters the most in January and February, it starts with winning the NFC North. And you can tell and you can see it in the building how important it is of beating the Ohio States, of winning the Big Ten championship. And it's not something we shy away from anymore. It needs to be talked about. And I'm starting to see that same parallel in the growth of the mindset and the way that everything is talked about within the program that we had in Detroit. And I expect those results to be the same. And now Detroit has now won the NFC North 2 years in a row. Obviously going for that Super Bowl is kind of the next goal. Obviously, just like us, the next goal is to win that national championship. So I love the parallels that I'm seeing just in the culture and within the building, because I think that is so, so important.
Yeah, maturation process. You no longer want to be the once every 7 years. Mm-hmm. You now want to be a player every single year. Yep. And that's the thing, is you can't win it every year. You're not going to. There's too many good football coaches, too many good football players, too many great programs within the Big Ten. Yep. But if you're consistently knocking at the fucking door, the dominoes will start falling. And it's hard because I think we've as a society have pointed at like the Patriots and like Penn State wrestling. Like, you sit there and you look at these dynasties that we've been able to witness as sports fans, and we don't really appreciate like how hard it is to do that. Like, it is so hard to do. Alabama, it is so hard to be that consistently great day in, day out, game in, game out, season in, season out. It's so hard.
Because there's just so many factors that go into it. There's just so many factors. Not only do you have to replenish talent year in and year out, you got to replenish the mindset and forget about whatever the hell you did last year, because last year doesn't matter. And as human beings, it's very natural to get satisfied. It is very natural to get in this state of being of, oh, well, if I just do what I did yesterday, like the same result is going to happen. And that's just not the reality of how things happen. In fact, that next year after you win that national championship, it's going to be even harder than it was last year. You got to do even more because now you're getting absolutely every single team's best shot. The margin of error is that much smaller in each game, and all of the crunch time moments of the game, you got to be that much sharper. You got to be that much tougher because you're going to get every single team's best punch, and every single team is going to treat you like you're their Super Bowl, and that is not an easy thing to do week in and week out, and that's what makes these dynasties, the Alabamas, the Patriots runs so impressive is you have leaders that are so freaking locked into winning and know so much about what it's about and will accept absolutely nothing less at all times. And the accountability starts obviously with the head coach, but the real accountability starts with the players and players checking each other and saying, "Nah, fuck that. That ain't it. That's not what's gonna get us there. No, listen to your vet. No, listen to this old guy. No, you're young. You haven't earned your stripes yet. You do need to work, And having players speak up and develop and continually build that culture and cultivate it is so important. I just think we're on the right track when it comes to those things.
Well said, Jay. Well said, bro. We covered the old PSU news that we have been late on. I hope you guys enjoyed that perspective. Let's shift gears here. Draft process. We've talked about it. I mentioned it earlier. Two guys who've been through it. Combine just ended. We got some really big names. We got some really interesting prospects. And I think that's kind of where I want to start, man. Like we could talk about Abdul and Tyler. Like, obviously, they're going to get theirs. They're going to eat. They've proven what they should prove. But the guy that I really want to talk about it's been getting a little buzz coming off the combine is KJ Winston. When you talk about body style, tape that he's put out there, he's a guy who had a lot of hype coming into this year, got banged up, had to shut it down. But when I look at a guy like KJ, everything translates.
Oh yeah,
body type, savviness. He's going to be maybe a little bit more. You're going to need to give him a little bit more of a leash in terms of creativity and testing the boundaries in which his skill set allows, just because of lack of real reps. But if you got a situation as an organization to insert a guy to grow and blossom, I think the floor is only so low, but the ceiling is kind of limitless with a guy like him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I love KJ's game. I mean, all the scouts, coming into this year based on that last year's tape that he had played, we're all talking first round. I mean, like, no doubt first round. From a body control standpoint, from a range standpoint, he's got coverage skills. He's got the leadership aspect. He's out there. He's talking. He's demonstrative. I mean, he's got all of the intangibles and all the qualities, and then he's got all of the physical qualities on top of that to make for a really good, rangy safety. And, I mean, we've been putting out some DBs kind of year after year. Terry Smith's been doing a really great job of developing guys. But, I think one thing that NFL scouts and coaches really do going into these periods of times is they'll have players like KJ Winston that they know are good, and they refuse to talk about them because they don't want nobody else to know. And this guy is just like this, just flying under the radar, and everybody's just hoo-hoo, la-la-la, pretending like they don't know how good of a player he is, but I promise you they know. Now, this guy's going to get drafted. I know he's coming off of the ACL, and that's always tough and, somewhat of a gamble, but, I'm very sure that he's going to be on pace and, back to where he needs to be come playing time. But, man, this dude is an absolute prospect. He's got all the intangibles, all the physical qualities. I'm excited about him.
So to your point, where do you think he lands?
I think had the injury not happened, I definitely had him as an end of the first round prospect. I do think there are a couple of safeties who made a lot of money at the combine. That Nick Emanwari guy, 6'3", 220, runs a 4.38. I mean, he 42-inch vertical. I mean, those are those are some eye-popping numbers. I think that guy definitely solidified himself in the first round. But coming off of the injury, I still think he's a top 3 round guy. I don't think KJ falls any further than the 3rd round. I truly don't. And nobody's really talking about him right now just because he didn't play last year. But, I mean, you saw guys, I'll give you an example, Javon Holland. You know, he played his freshman and sophomore year. COVID happened. He opted out of the season, doesn't play his junior year, gets drafted in the 2nd round. Like, these scouts and coaches, they know what they got. They watch this tape. They study. They know what it is. So I think regardless of the injury, regardless of the lack of reps last season, I still think KJ is a guy who doesn't slip out of the first 3 rounds.
Yeah. I think your point about keeping some prospects hush-hush,
oh, yeah.
he's definitely one of those guys. Like, he hasn't had any of the media hype because he hasn't had any tape. Mm-hmm. So everyone's kind of just going, all right, we'll keep it that way. Yeah. But I guarantee you there's been some really interesting conversations between his agent and some of those GMs and head coaches. I'm really excited about him. And then Abdul and Tyler, you know, Tyler obviously, Tyler doesn't have to do a damn thing in my opinion. No, he just has
happy that he didn't do anything at the combine, honestly.
Yeah, he just had to stay healthy.
Yeah. Not that I think he would have hurt himself in any kind of way, but it's just completely unnecessary, you know. I mean, we see stories and we see how some guys can fall and you know, not fall based on, you know, the underwear competition that everybody calls it, you know, the combine. I mean, I don't put a lot of coins into the combine, man. I put a lot of coins into this dude a freaking football player. And what does the tape look like? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Can this dude ball? Can he play? When the lights are on and you turn that tape on, who the hell is he? Yeah, he may have ran a 4.7, but when I watch him on tape, he looks like a freaking 4.5, and he's running past motherfuckers that ran a 4.4 at the combine, so there must be some correlation. And I know the smarter coaches, the smarter scouts, that's what they're doing. That's their mindset and how they're thinking. So, I mean, Tyler and Abdul, I don't think either of them, I mean, obviously, Abdul has a chance to go number 1. Let's start there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at, too. Like, with his – they're talking about the foot. He's not going to need surgery. How much of an impact do you think that really is? That's the other thing. Even with KJ, right? Like, we kind of benefited from it where the advancements in medical technology and procedures, like an ACL in the early 2000s was kind of like a big deal. Right. We, as an ACL, was kind of like, it's an ACL. They'll be back. It'll be stronger than before, you know? Yeah, exactly. Now, like, with Abdul, I just don't – it's hard for me to believe, to your point, that there's going to be it's going to be a talking point for the talking heads on TV. Everybody's going to be bringing it up. But when it comes down to it, he's going to be ready to play come training camp. Wherever he lands, he is going to be full bore, 100% healthy coming into training camp. So does this guy make an impact on my football team, worthy of the number 1 overall pick or not? And I think he's definitely a guy that's in the discussion. I don't see him sliding out of the top 5, hell, maybe even the top 3.
Yeah, I think he's also one of those guys where, you know, you talk about floor and ceiling, and the floor is high. The floor is high, guys. Period, end of story. This guy can rush the quarterback. The value of rushing the quarterback in the NFL is at a premium right now. With the Patrick Mahomes and the Joe Burrows and the Josh Allens and the game-breaker quarterbacks that are now controlling the era of this football, having premium pass rushers, you can't get enough of them. Period, end of story.
Watch the Super Bowl. Yeah. How it affects a guy like that, right?
Oh, perfect. Yeah. And that Eagles D-line just got after the Chiefs over and over and over again. And this is the type of dude that we call in the football world a game wrecker. The type of dude that you have to go into the meetings offensively, and you got to talk about this guy. Because if this guy does not get handled, whatever the hell you drew up, whatever the hell you thought was going to happen, it ain't going to happen because you can't block him. That is the type of player that Abdul is. So I think the floor is very high. The ceiling is as high as Micah Parsons. Maybe better. Maybe better. I know it's a big deal because Micah's one hell of a player. But this Abdul guy has the same type of freakish qualities that Micah has. I don't even care if he runs the 40-yard dash at the pro day. I've had teammates that have dealt with stress fractures. All it takes is some rest. That's why he's not getting surgery, because it's one of those things that it just needs time. That's really all it is. And I'd be willing to bet that this is something that he's been dealing with for quite some time. I would bet my money that even during the season, while he was out there getting sacks against SMU, getting sacks against Boise State, getting sacks against Notre Dame, that same stress factor that all of these talking heads are talking about on TV, he was dealing with and balling with.
Yeah,
so,
he probably had a shank, because I had a stress fracture in high school. He probably had one of those metal shanks in his cleat, and it wasn't bending much, and
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
it's a good point.
I think Abdul is I think he's the number one pick. I know a lot of people talk about Travis Hunter. They say the quarterback class is a little bit weak. My thing with Travis Hunter is just the fact that from a cornerback and wide receiver standpoint, your impact can really vary on too many other outside variables. As a wide receiver, you may have very mediocre quarterback play, so your impact just isn't really there because you're not getting the ball, or maybe your quarterback's holding the ball too much, whatever the case. At corner, maybe the same thing. You don't know what the impact is going to look like with a Travis Hunter.
They're too far away from the football.
Yeah.
Point blank period. Like when you simplify it, like the guys that are closest to the football are the ones that are going to be at a premium. Right now, in today's game, too many good athletes. The outside guys, there's a lot of really good athletes. There's guys we're not even talking about who could be game breakers in the NFL on the outside. When you're talking about somebody that touches the football every play, your quarterback, and then building out from there, everything starts right there. Yep. To your point. If you don't have great protection, you're not going to be able to execute. If you don't have a great pass rush, you could have the best DBs in the world. They ain't covering those guys for 5 seconds. Right. You keep going on and on and on, but it starts right there. So, very, very good points.
Yeah.
Next one and last one of this segment, Kobe King. I want to get your perspective on Kobe because we talked about it. I thought he came into his own towards the back half of the year. Could have came back. Could have come back.
Absolutely.
Do I think that he would have benefited from that? I think that there's hindsight is always 20/20, something that's going to be talked about. I'm a perfect example of that in terms of my career. Having left really, really early, really, really young, and having an extra year to develop probably would have bode well for me. But what's your perspective on Kobe?
I think Kobe is our most interesting prospect to me because I feel like his college sample size is a bit small from a standpoint of starting tenure. But I also feel like from the middle of this year to the end of this year, Kobe grew and really came into his own and became the leader of that defense and really, like you said, was the glue of our defense and was playing his best ball, which you want every college prospect to be doing. You want college prospects to be peaking as they're leaving college and feel like, oh, okay, I've kind of mastered this level. And I wouldn't say he mastered the level, but, man, I really feel like he was playing at a high level from the middle all the way through to the end of the season. You know, he thought he did pretty solid at the combine. I thought he looked good. Some scouts say that maybe the movement skills weren't as good as they thought it would be. I thought he trimmed down a bit. He was down at 236. He was listed at 248 on the roster. I never felt like he was really that heavy. But he's the type of guy I feel like can go in the 5th round, in the 6th round, has the tangibles and the intangibles to know how to work, to know how to attack and get himself better consistently on a daily basis, where he could go on, make some plays on special teams, and really get some time on defense and slowly develop into a rotational or possibly a starter on a defense. But I think no matter what, if you draft this guy in the 5th or 6th round, I do believe he's going to give you value to your team, to wherever it is that you need it, even if his rookie year, that just means special teams.
Yeah, I think he's an asset to your program, but I don't think to your organization. I don't think he's a guy that you're obviously drooling over and going to build a defense around, right? I think that's unique, and I think that's where I wanted to my next question to you was like, where does a guy like Kobe fit in today's game? With the amount of focus, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, of elite athletes, I don't think he's that. I think
Yeah.
he's a really good football player.
Yep.
But it's just kind of like me watching it. He's your prototypical linebacker in the late 90s. Like you want a guy like that. Like you need a guy like that to go in there, bang heads, fill the gap, be consistent, be a leader. But I don't think that really matters as much in today's NFL, right? It's so much horizontal, so much speed, so much. You could get so creative with alignments and assignments and creating really shitty geometry for the offensive line in the run game and stuff like that, just in alignment. But because they're athletic enough, they can still get to their gap responsibilities. I don't think Kobe's like that guy. Like I think he's going to be a guy that's definitely going to be a heavy inside the box type of player.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to be really sound in that. But how does he fit in today's NFL game?
I mean, I agree with you to an extent from a standpoint of, those 90s players, and those type of attributes don't matter as much. But I disagree with you because, the coaches fall in love with that. Because the coaches,
100%.
at the end of the day, the scouts and the coaches, they love and eat that shit up because that's the football that they know. It's a type of mentality that they want to see out of their players. They know that they're getting a guy who's super mature, who's going to go about his business the right way. They know he's a Penn State guy, which in the NFL means a lot. And I've talked to many coaches from many teams, and they always say, man, you Penn State guys, man, you're just built different. And that's up here. And we all know 90% of the game at that level is up here. There's only so many elite physical guys in the NFL, guys. There's a reason why we have a combine and all the linebackers all range between 4'4" and 4'6". Like, the makeups are the same. There's only so many freaky Micah Parsons type of athletes in the NFL, and the Tyreek Hills and the Tank Dells. There's just so many. So I just really feel like the coaches and the scouts really value that mindset, that head-smashing linebacker. A guy's going to stick his face in it no matter what. A guy's going to play hard as shit for his teammates and play the game the right way. I just think that the coaches are going to fall in love with a guy like that. And no matter what happens, this guy's going to be given an incredible opportunity to show what he's got. Now, what he does with it is what he does with it, but he's going to get his shot.
And I think you answered the question in a roundabout way in the way that what I was trying to pull out of you. He's a locker room pillar guy.
Yeah.
Like he's like you said, you talked about special teams. People don't talk about that enough, how much of an impact that is. Fuck, you're a guy that cuts your teeth in some ways in that capacity,
Absolutely.
Right? You can talk about it the whole way, and that's what I love about you. Because I trust me, I'm not a flash and flavor guy, bro. Like I'm a old school. Let's run it. Let's run the football like physical football guy. That's how I see the game. That's how I appreciate the game. With a guy like Kobe, I think you're getting a potential special teams captain, locker room pillar, sets the tone of the foundation of the players. Like you said, you could have whatever you want organization, but ultimately it comes from the players. He's a Detroit guy. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep. Grit.
Yeah.
He's all about it. Grit, you see it in the style of his game. You see it in the way that he plays. He's going to be that guy that whatever rookie class of a team that he belongs to, he's going to be the guy who's going to be encouraging dudes to stay after, and he's going to be encouraging the other drafted linebacker to stay extra hours and to study the film with him and to get his head in the playbook and all those things. And I just think that a lot of that is really lost in this day and age of kid that goes into the NFL at this point in time. And having that old school mentality, having those values, I think coaches at this point in time value it at a premium because with NIL, with all the individualism that's now coming into the league, everything is so me. And I think the coaches, the scouts, the organization, the front office, they value guys nowadays even more so that are all about the team. And Kobe King is one of those types of guys.
Hell yeah, brother. All right, let's get into this last segment. That's a good one. A little bit of draft prep. We got some more weeks to talk about that, so we'll make sure we're keeping tabs on the developments with a lot of those things, ears to the street and so forth and so on. But winter workouts are rolling. We're going to get our focus now, shift it to State College. Winter workouts are rolling. Spring game, hell. April 26th, I believe. Yep. Coming up faster than usual, in my opinion. Let's talk a little bit about that. I think it's interesting with the way that the football season now has gotten extended with the extended playoff. We obviously made a very deep run. A little bit uncharted territory for the program, I think, in terms of how our traditional calendar year worked, right? You went from the end of season, you got a little bit of a break, even after the bowl game, got a little bit of a break, came back to school, got right into the winter cycle, then you had your typical spring cycle, and then, you move on through summer and then training camp and then the season again. That winter spring cycle has now got condensed. Very interesting, right? Because you're always worried about tread on the tires with your players. You're always worried about keeping them fresh. That's become a bigger focus, I think. What's your take on the cramming session here that's going on this spring with winter workouts and spring ball?
I think we are in the worst era right now of that standpoint of what you just explained at the NFL level and at the college level. I mean, these guys are going, no rest. I mean, you look at the NFL. I mean, last year, my last game was like February 9th, and then you have teams that are getting new coaches. They're showing up like April 6th. I mean, you get like a month and a half. I mean, you're supposed to take a good 4 weeks at least to let your body freaking calm down. And I was one of the guys who's kind of psycho. Like, I was a crazy guy, like 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and I'm like itching to go back and get back in the gym. I'm thinking like, this guy over here is outworking me. If I don't start now, I'm trying to get ahead. And I mean, it's making it almost impossible at this point in time to really take care of the players and take care of the body. So this is a thing I think that needs a lot of discussion just because of the nature of our sport and the physicality of it. Because there's going to be too many guys going into the league with just too much tread, too many miles on the tires, and there needs to be better ways, not only that we can recover, but we can truly, truly build in rest into the offseason, because we're getting to a point now where rest is about to become non-existent. And I don't think in our sport that is a good thing at all.
Yeah, and it's crazy, too, because the one thing that I thought was a pretty consistent theme talking about Kobe was, like, the team, right? Because at the end of the day, like, you cut through all the bullshit. Like, football is about the team. It's about the culture. It's about the locker room. It's about the relationships. And the one thing, as much as I fucking hated it, the one thing that I always respected about winter workouts was that you found out who the fuck you were as a team during that period of time. And I think it's very valuable to have those experiences, right? How can I push this guy, right? How mentally tough is he, right? When it's the fourth quarter and shit hasn't been going right for 3 of them, and you're still in the fight, you still got a chance to win the football game. He's dog-ass tired. How's he going to respond? And I think it's impossible to manufacture those types of moments in practice without being in it. And I think winter workouts uniquely, because of the physical exhaustion and the mental fuckery that goes on during it. Yeah. It's the closest thing that you can do without having the pads on against Ohio State with 2 minutes left in the game, down by 3. You know what I mean? Like, it's the closest thing. And I think, like, having to now cut this short, you're losing an opportunity to either mold the team or find a gem who's going to be a guy that you can rely on or something like that. You're losing that opportunity. And then subsequently, to your point, and I think we're going to get into this too, with the roster cuts and all that shit, now spring ball gets condensed, so you don't get as much depth development. Yeah. And there's guys that are canceling spring games, so now they don't get an opportunity to go out and do that, right? So now you have to wait till training camp in week 1. It's just a combined thing too of, like, there's obviously the player health that you need to worry about, but then I think that there's also another element of, like, just overall really good examples of teams and developing your roster and developing your mindset and your foundation as a team that is also going by the wayside, right? So what is this going to be? Is this going to become the NBA where we're just going to plug and play and play fucking up and down, basketball and just put the best athletes out there and see what happens? Like, I don't know. I don't like that.
Yeah, well, let's start with the winter workout aspect of it, because you bring up great points. And I think the winter workout, it's a level of bonding by combined team suffering. There was something about, I mean, it's a truth. It's a truth. Because at the end of the day, everybody's suffering. Everybody feels like shit. We had to wake up I remember my alarms used to be set at 4:10 and 4:20. We had to be on that field at 4:50 in the morning. The workout started at 5. I'd be in that hot tub by 4:30 in the morning. And the same way I'm walking in, trudging through that snow over in Nittany Apartments, looking left and right, seeing some guys walk out of their doors with the same freaking look on their face like, fuck.
Trying to get your mind right.
There's something about that that makes you get closer as a team. And when you don't have that, I mean, we've seen Coach Franklin try to break some guys. I mean, I've seen some offensive linemen that maybe weren't in the best shape that Coach Franklin used to make go on the tire pull 2, 3, 4 times in a row against other dudes that had fresh legs. And what I mean, guys, I know you guys have all, if you don't know, the tire pull is when we all get in a circle. Everybody's watching. And that's the best thing about winter workouts, man. Everybody's watching. Every coach is watching. All the players are watching each other. And everybody's going to know if you were working, if you were cheating, it's going to be seen. So we all stand in a circle, one tire in the middle. It's basically who can pull the other person out of the circle with the tire. And this is one of those exercises, one of those competitions that really drains the hell out of your legs. Because you're giving it everything. You're trying to stay low. You're trying to get leverage. You're trying to pull this guy back out of the circle. Everybody's cheering. Everybody's hollering. And then he makes him go again, but against fresh legs. So this guy's fresh. You just had a drill, and you're going to do it again. And then he made him go again. I'm not going to name the player. I know you know. But that's the type of shit that goes down in winter workouts where it's like, man, if Coach Franklin don't think you're a man, you're going to become a man in winter workouts. Because guess what? In this life, the way Coach Franklin sees it, you ain't got a choice but to become a man. And I'm going to make you a man one way or the other. So I think losing that aspect is it's really not a good thing because so much gets found out during winter workouts. Like you said, the type of man you are, the type of dude you are, the type of work you're willing to put in, knowing if you're the guy that's dependable, knowing that, hey, when you're dog-ass tired in the fourth quarter and there's 2 minutes left and you need to go make a play against Ohio State, can I call on your number? Those questions get answered during winter workouts. Because if the coaches don't see it, they're not going to know. They're not going to trust you. That's where trust is developed. So like you said, plugging and playing guys, it becomes that because now you just don't know. And you're like, okay, well, this guy's a 4-star. He ran this. Let's see how he does. Like, that's just not how you want to run a program. So, it sucks that everything is getting condensed because there's so much value in that period of time, and all of this needs to get fixed from the transfer portal window to now the roster's getting cut down. We know how it is with spring practice. I mean, guys get hurt in spring, guys. That's the reality. Guys get hurt. Now we're condensing down to 105. You got even less bodies. Now you can have a week where you go through a string of injuries, and you might have to call out practice because it ain't worth it. Are you going to jeopardize your season over spring practice? You can't afford to. You just paid Jim Knowles. You just hired Stan Drayton. T9's in the building. There's too much at stake. And in this revolving door world that we now live in with NIL and transfer portal, every single year is so much more critical and crucial than it has ever been in the era of college football ever. That's the reality.
That's what makes me sick, man. Like I said, it comes back to and I'm not a proponent or a basher of NIL. I think it's great. I'm not. I'm pretty indifferent, right? But where I kind of start to draw the line again is when you start taking away the actual life lesson opportunities of what this is at its core. It's a fucking game, but it's the greatest teacher of life, right? Man. It's about everyone talks about setting these guys up for life and really, you can plug and play this foundationally in any scenario, right? Whether the program talks about it or not, there's things that you experience throughout your sports journey that ultimately separate you from 99.999997% of the population that puts you in a position to be successful, and then limiting the experiences to actually be able to have the experience, internalize it, and then apply it to what makes you a better man or a better father or a better brother. That's the craziest part about it. And like I said, I think just in the fandom of our culture and our society, we're losing the real life benefits of what this experience is about, right?
Man. You could not have said that any better. You couldn't have said it better. And I think the thing about a thing like winter workouts, man, is there are so many people in this world who go through life never truly knowing what they're made out of because they just don't push themselves hard enough. They don't go far enough. They don't push the limits enough. Being put in environments where you have absolutely zero choice but to test your limits and to see just how far you're going to go, that pays dividends so much farther beyond football and just in life in general. And it's one of those things where, when Coach Franklin says, hey, committing to Penn State is a 40-year decision. Those are the types of things that you go through that make it a 40-year decision. That's why it's a 40-year decision, because you're going to go through things here that you're not going to go through anywhere else, and that nobody else is going to push you to go through because they're not going to care enough about you to do it. Because guess what? When you make it to the corporate world, it's going to be you either got it or you don't. You're either going to work or you're out of here. You either perform or they don't give a fuck about you. That's life. That's real life. And to lose that in the setting of college football in a place where we're supposed to make boys into men, and we're starting to take away the things that make them men, is a travesty. I can't say this enough, is a travesty. We got guys avoiding adversity. We got guys transferring as soon as they don't get playing time because they were promised by mommy and daddy or promised by this coach that this happened, but as soon as they came into campus, they didn't get their fucking heads in the playbook because they didn't give enough of a shit. And they expect that, because they're a 5-star that, hey, this shit's promised. Dude, there's people here that have been working 2-3 years, ain't got a snap. Are you serious? You know, so that to me is truly a travesty. I can't dive into that far enough. Honestly, it's terrible.
Well, we got a whole offseason to cover it, bro. But this has been I think this has been a good reintroduction of the pocket to Penn State fans, and I'm excited to chop it up again next week. We gotta start diving into the next topics. But with that being said, the one thing we are bringing back is the mailbag. We want to make sure that during this off-season period, there's a lot of questions. I'm sure there's a lot of interesting topics of discussion that you folks can bring, listeners, followers of the Pocket and State Media. So we will be getting some mailbags out the end of this week for next week's show. And as always, we appreciate the support. Like, subscribe, follow. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on all of our socials at State Media PSU, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Jason and myself, our personals, you guys can find all those there. They're attached somewhere, shape, or form. But the more support we get, the better this is for everybody. And we will catch you guys next week.